agents. And so I think we've all been sitting and listening to a lot of talks, so I figured we'd start with like something active. So let's get a show of hands. Who's used ChatGPT? All right, now keep your hand up if you've used it and gotten value at work. Now keep your hand up if you fully deployed it in a factory. That was crazy. Hey, we got one. So in a room full of leaders, I think we all agree that AI is a transformative technology, but only one of us, I think, has actually deployed it fully on the factory floor. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, is how can we actually activate AI on every shop floor in America and across the world. Let's start with an agenda. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the manufacturing landscape in 2025, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of AI. And then we'll bring it together, and we'll talk about use cases and how to actually turn this on the shop floor. So let's set the stage. We are actually going through one of the biggest American manufacturing booms that has ever happened. From 2005 to 2023, there's been an average of $84 billion invested on new factory construction. In 2024 alone, that number nearly tripled to $225 billion in building new factories, right? But while the machines are new, the labor market is becoming super challenging. So we have operator tenure, which has gone from nearly 20 years, 5 years ago, down to 3 years on the shop floor today. At the same time, a third of the workforce is within shouting distance of retirement. And they're taking that tribal knowledge with them, right? And then how that shows up is 1 in 2 jobs are going unfilled in manufacturing. So what's the result of that? The result is you get non-standard work on the factory floor. And with non-standard work, you have quality issues, you have downtime, you have safety issues, and at the end of the day, missed production targets, right? And so what do we do about that? Let's start by talking about where AI is today. I'm going to talk about the 2 different categories of AI. So there's generative AI, and then there's agentic AI. Let's start by talking about generative AI. Gen AI is named after the ability to generate a response to a prompt, right? This is the one that everyone put their hand up for. So in the classic ChatGPT example, when you submit a prompt, ChatGPT comes back and gives you a response, right? So an example of this would be, plan me a weekend trip in Dallas after AES. And then ChatGPT would come back with an itinerary. Now, let's talk about agentic AI. Agentic AI is actually a little bit newer, and it takes things a step further. So what it does is it doesn't just answer what you should do this weekend, it actually acts. So it's actually able to, in that example, right, book me a weekend trip in Dallas, or book me my weekend. It's actually able to book your flight. It's able to plan what you're doing, buy the tickets, make sure that you're able to get where you need to go. And it's one step further than the copy-paste itinerary you can send your friends. And so, there we go. How can we activate AI on every shop floor? That actually goes back to both of these kinds of generative and agentic AI approaches, right? So at Squint, we work with global 500 manufacturers, from tires to tortillas and everything in between. And I'm going to talk through a couple use cases for both types of AI. Let's start with finding the right information at the right time on the shop floor. The use case for this, I think, I don't need to explain to probably most of the people in this room, but every operator comes across a moment where they're trying to do something and they just can't remember exactly what they're supposed to do, right? And so what they do is they try to find the binder, then they try to find the right page in the binder, then they try to find the diagram and the paragraph that describes what the diagram is doing, and they try to interpret what that means, and then go fix the issue, right? But this is a really slow method. It's error-prone, and it's just not built for today's pace. By the way, all of that assumes that the binder was actually up to date. So the solution for that is actually where Gen AI shines. You can have something like, with Squint, we have an industrial copilot, But this is a copilot that can give answers directly from the documentation when the problem arises. So the operator can say something like, hey, what does this fault code mean? How do I reset this machine? Let's look at an example. So I'm going to play a video. And what you see here is the operator can actually jump into the copilot and ask a question. How do I prevent bubbles in the injection molder? And the copilot goes through and looks at all of the documentation that that person has access to, so it knows who they are, where they are, what they're supposed to be doing, and it asks a follow-up question based on what they might be talking about. It narrows that answer down based on the operator's response, and it comes up with a step-by-step guide that picks up on step 2 where they got stuck, and it walks them through the rest of that procedure. Right? So this is like a perfect example of Gen AI in practice. Activation takes minutes, right? There's only 2 things you really need to do. The first is you can take that documentation, whether it be documents from vendor manuals or PDFs that you've generated over the years, and you can feed all of that into something like an industrial copilot. So with Squint, you can upload that into, connect it to Squint. Squint will ingest and index all of those documents and understand how they apply to each operator. And then you actually put a platform in the hands of the operator, in this case, a phone or a tablet, and they can now go ask questions, right? And now they have that expertise handy at the right moment, at the right time, based on what's going on. The results we've seen from this have been incredible. Like, we've actually been able to, this is real customer data, we've been able to cut down mistakes by nearly 50%. Faults are dropping, and not only are they dropping, but the repairs are happening faster. We're seeing a decrease in mean time to repair. And not only that, it's not just rushed work, it's actually higher quality work. The repairs are resulting in an increase in the mean time between failures. So not only can you fix the issue, but it doesn't happen again as frequently. The ROI from this is astounding. This is an example from one of our customers. They have a case erector machine. They actually have 4 per facility. And it's the biggest fault generation, or it's the biggest source of faults in their factory. And what they did was they deployed Squint. We cut the number of faults down by 50%. They were able to look at what downtime costs per hour and actually compute hard ROI as to what the impact of Gen AI was, right? And so they're saving over $1 million per facility per year. The best part is that operators actually love it. They're making friends with Copilot, right? They're talking to Copilot, calling it Lil Bro. They're thanking it, they're complimenting it, they're joking with it. And that's a sign of real impact and real adoption of an enterprise product, when you see it being pulled in on the floor. So going back to our categories of AI, right? Let's switch into agentic AI and talk a little bit about that. Second challenge, capturing expert knowledge, right? We just talked a little bit about how expert knowledge deployed at the right time is key, but where does it come from? So we've talked about this, but, and I'm sure people are familiar, I think probably every talk before me hinted at it, but let's say you're going out to go capture tribal knowledge. Your biggest challenge is actually going to be finding the right person and making them available at the right time to solve the issue. Even if you do find that person at the right time and place, how do you then make that permanent? How do you remove that dependency, right? It's kind of like the supply chain. You want to create redundancies at every stop, and you want to do the same thing for your knowledge supply chain from operators who hold all of it, right? So the solution to this is actually agentic AI, and so I'll share a couple examples of what we've done here, but we have an agentic approach. It's called Squint Smart Calls, and it's an agent. And the way that this works is it actually can start automating the process of capturing tribal knowledge and then takes the action of turning that into a knowledge article and publishing it back into the Copilot, so you never have to have that process of capturing again, right? I'll give you a hard example. So let's go back to that scenario where you're using the Copilot and you say, hey, how do I fix this fault? Let's say you've never uploaded documentation, no one's seen this fault before, or someone has, that person on third shift who is going to be in on Thursday. But that's it. There's no documentation. So Copilot doesn't know the answer. Copilot actually comes back and says, hey, I can't help you, but this other person is actually the expert on this machine based on the records I see. Maybe you should call them. And so you go and you place a call to the expert. And what happens is the smart calls agent listens in on the call and follows the discovery of the problem as well as the solution. And so that person on the phone, it's probably like they're not working right now. They're annoyed they were called. They pick up, they help you, they solve the issue. And Smart Call Agent is able to take that whole resolution cycle and build a knowledge article, put that back into the knowledge repository that is Squint, and now next time someone asks Copilot that question, it's actually able to bring that knowledge to life, right? And you never have to call that person again for that same question. So results. What does this do? Well, it's pretty insane. We're seeing a 97% reduction in the time to capture tribal knowledge or create work instructions for things that don't exist. That's literally going from like 8-9 hours of information gathering down to a couple minutes, which is just the phone call. And then not only that, the actual SOPs that are generated from this are actually really high quality. We're seeing them on an ongoing basis reduce the support time needed for operators on the floor that can't get what they need on the first try through the AI. The ROI from this can be similarly mapped to a number, right? This is hard ROI. You're able to look at, this is an example, a customer site that has CNCs. They have 500 operators per facility. You can kind of do the math. I won't walk through it, but they've been able to compute the amount of support hours they had before and after deploying this. And this is evergreen, right? This is going to continue to reduce support hours, but already they've reduced it by 76%. And this is in the first year. And they've computed over $1 million of savings on this use case per year. The best part about this is experts love it, right? Oftentimes I'm asked, hey, isn't that job security that's going away? Isn't that person going to be very unwilling to be recorded because now they're not going to be needed as much? I think that intuitively that sounds right to me, but as we talk to our customers and we talk to these experts, what they tell us is that, hey, now I don't have to wake up in the middle of the night. I can do my job. I can actually go do more valuable, higher impact things with my time. And they feel like they're up-leveled and released from this constant, nagging when they're not actually working. And no more fire drills. So going back to bringing this all together, going back to the categories of AI, we have Gen AI, we have agentic AI. At Squint, we were thinking about how do we really bring this to manufacturing and what does it look like? And so we want to introduce a concept called agentic manufacturing. And this is actually building a platform that takes agents and puts them all together in a way that it is a platform you can deploy, and it actually puts agents to work to make everything more efficient. Agentic manufacturing basically is when AI works alongside frontline teams, right? And it makes decisions alongside an operator and then takes actions alongside an operator. And the result of that is a safer, more accurate, more efficient production line. Final challenge. So final use case, we're going to talk about agentic manufacturing to make every operator behave like an expert, regardless of their prior expertise or skill level. So I think standardization is notoriously difficult. No two operators do anything the same way. And oftentimes, supervisors who are there to up-level everyone, they're not around enough and there's not enough hours in the day for them to do that for every single person. Typically, this is the worst part, is when non-standard work happens, which is often a result of that support not being there, you don't actually know that non-standard work happened until something really bad happens downstream, right? So you have downtime, you have quality issues, then you run your analysis and you do the root cause, and you find out that something's been going on in the factory that actually is not supposed to be happening, but you have no idea how long it's been this way, and now you've wasted so many batches of production. So the solution, you could probably guess I was talking about agents, so it's an agent, but agentic verification. The way this works is experts that actually know what standard work is supposed to result in, not the input of the work, but the output of the work, they can actually take pictures and show the AI what good looks like. And then the AI can now understand that and be the expert, also knowing what the procedure is, alongside the operator every step of the way, ensuring that we're getting to a good result. And then when things veer off course, they're able to catch that, the AI is able to catch that in real time, right? So you don't have to wait for 9 hours of bad batches. You can get that, you can nip it right in the bud without a human present. So I'll walk through a series of little GIFs and that show you kind of how this works. But let's start with this example where you have this picture that you're looking at, which is 2 pins on the left and 1 pin on the right. Those are the white blocks that you see on the black slab. So I'm going to hit play, and this operator is actually going to take a picture of the actual case, and now you'll notice the pin on the right is missing, right? They only have 2 blocks on the left side. So the AI then actually analyzes this picture, and it comes back, and it says, hey, this failed. You're missing a connector on the right side. And it shows you the criteria, right? This is all AI-driven. Next, the operator now has exact instructions of what to do. They go and they complete the work. And let's see, there we go. And so when the AI sees it being done correctly, it actually allows them to proceed. And so imagine if you could take the biggest, most critical steps and add this verification in, and it's the equivalent of having a really annoying supervisor over the shoulder of the operator every time that step is done, making sure that it gets done correctly. But you've removed the bottleneck of supervisor time. You've removed the bottleneck of people not knowing what good looks like. You've increased the confidence that operators have, right? Those are the impacts of something like this. Activating this is super easy. I hinted at it earlier, but you can actually just describe what you need to see in that step. You take a couple pictures, the agent thinks for a moment, and it comes back with a set of follow-up questions once. And once you answer those, it actually calibrates. And now, every time that process happens, it's able to confirm whether it was done correctly or not. And it's creating an audit trail along the way, right? And it's as easy as that. This is one shot. There's no training models. There's no special deployment stuff you have to do. This is all possible with just an application, right? Let's talk about results. So this is pretty astounding, but with the agentic platform that we've deployed, we're seeing in one factory, they've decreased scrap by 96%. I'll say it again, 96% of all scrap is gone. The ROI from this is, again, it's hard ROI. You can compute this. This customer, they make tires. They had 6,000 tires per year per facility that they were building. There's $130 of revenue lost per scrap tire. And they were able to eliminate 96% of that scrap and compute almost $1 million in savings for this one station in the factory that was creating scrap. The coolest part is, again, going back to the operator, the operators feel really empowered. They don't feel like this is unnecessary supervision. They actually don't feel like it's annoying. It's not Big Brother-like because they actually feel like they have confidence. They have the ability to go do their work without an actual human judging them. It's actually just supporting them do their work along the way, right? Supervisors, when we talk to them, they feel like it's actually hitting their numbers. They can't be everywhere all at once, and this is allowing them to get the output that they want from their teams in a way that is, also maintaining and preserving their relationship with the team that doesn't feel like they're constantly providing oversight. So let's put this all together. Let's start by creating the full picture of what an agentic manufacturing system looks like. So step 1, you would locate your expertise. This might be in the heads of the experts that have been around for 2 decades. It might be in thousands of binders and lots of PDFs. But once you've done that, you would actually take a agentic knowledge capture approach or a platform like Squint that would be able to take those inputs, take the documents, take people's memories, people's experiences, and turn those into knowledge articles that then live in a knowledge repository. And then you can actually use agents to put that knowledge in people's hands. So now they can use an industrial copilot that actually has real contextual information on what they're supposed to do. Operators also have AI verification. There's a bunch of other use cases I'm going to talk about briefly, But this is kind of the flow chart, right? It doesn't stop there. I'm going to share 3 examples of agents that are, that we're working on at Squint that are also coming out, just to get people's gears turning. So the first one is a continuous improvement agent. Imagine if you had a platform deployed across several factories across the globe, and it was actually able to look at 2 operators in 2 different countries doing the same process. And it noticed that one operator was markedly better at this task than the other, right? And they had actually made a process improvement on this procedure. How would you get that procedure now documented, updated, and pushed out across the globe? That would take months, right, if ever. It often goes unnoticed. So in this case, this agent is actually monitoring and detecting that anomaly, and then it's able to capture that new procedure and push that out to every factory across the globe. Just an example. The next one I want to talk about is a compliance agent. So all those protocols that are out there, the specs that we have to follow, right, ISO, HACCP, all of these are constantly changing. And when a revision happens and the spec changes, you actually have to go and you have to manually update every piece of documentation you already have so that it is still compliant, right? There's teams doing this work today. You wouldn't take them out of the loop, but you give them AI to make them more efficient. The AI can actually go look at the spec when it changes. It can go look at all the content that exists. It can make suggestions that bring it back up to date and under compliance and help the human in the loop actually approve, deny, or edit those changes, right? And it speeds up that whole process of staying compliant. And the last one I'll talk about is a live incident agent. So let's say something bad happens on the floor. You create an incident. This is an agent that actually is alongside you in that process. It documents what happened. It helps you get to a resolution first and foremost. And then it actually takes it from there and starts to take photos, videos, interviews of operators, and builds a whole incident package, right? That then you can use as for audits, for continuous improvement, for a number of things like training, right? And so these are just some examples of what agents look like in the wild in manufacturing today. But I think, to sum this all up, in 2025 and 2026, the best, most effective factories are going to be the ones that have humans and AI making decisions together, right? They're going to be creating more standard work, better quality items, reduce downtime, improve safety, and ultimately they're going to be the ones hitting their production targets as manufacturing scales. So with that, I'm going to wrap. We have a booth. Come check it out if you want to try some of this for yourself. And if there's time, I can take a couple questions. But thank you.
Any questions? I'm sure there are. Devin, thank you very much for all of those insights. The numbers, as always, are great. Hands up for questions. Don't worry, I've been walking all afternoon, it's okay.
Thanks for your presentation. A couple of things I was thinking about, and I'll just go with one for right now. We talk a little bit about some of the safety issues of coming into a manufacturing plant and then saying, hey, everybody get your phone out to start operating. In particular, if you're in food-based production lines, or if you're in really heavy equipment-based production lines where potentially you drop your phone, it jams a machine, and now you have bigger problems?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think, for Squint, actually, I would say probably 3 of the top 5 food and beverage manufacturers are deploying Squint today across their factories. So we've been able to kind of overcome this. I think I don't have a silver bullet, though. It's typically not a phone. It's an iPad mini or something like that, like a tablet that we see deployed. I think oftentimes it's worth considering kind of what's the alternative, right? Would you rather they have the knowledge and then take on the risk of them dropping the iPad into the machine? Or would you rather they not have the knowledge and take on the risk of getting hurt or something? So I think you kind of have to balance things. But in practicality, we've seen that it does deploy quite well, and we've not seen major issues with a lot of the hundreds of factories that we're in that are food production. Sorry if there's not a better answer, but.
Hey, Devin.
Hey, Brian.
So this is awesome. Thank you. Good presentation. curious about on-prem capabilities, because a lot of the, like for Boeing in particular, we do a lot of defense contracting, things like that. And so we can't have stuff out there in the wild in any stretch. It has to be pretty much on-prem. So if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, great question. It's actually super timely. So I don't know how much people follow, but Apple recently launched foundation models that will run on device, right? That's a huge unlock for some of these use cases, and it's something that we're working on. I don't know if I'm supposed to announce that yet. There's something coming out. Yeah, we're working on it. No one tell anyone. There will be like a tweet or something at some point, but very possible and very top of mind. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Devin.
Thank you.